Well, greetings YouTube, LMS Tactical here. I wanted to talk a little bit about the Million MAGA March that my daughter and I attended on Saturday. By now, I'm sure most of you have seen videos, not just mine, but all over the internet, and it was quite a spectacular turnout. Now, it was for such a large amount of patriots and people that were pro-Trump and pro-law and order, and people who are demanding, fair elections. As always with Trump supporters and with conservatives, it was an unbelievably peaceful protest, just like the Second Amendment protest that some of you saw me attend in Virginia about a little over a year ago. Very polite, very orderly, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people, probably 1 million or more. But certainly more than 500,000 as a conservative estimate, and just completely peaceful. Now, it didn't stay that way. As predicted by many of us who understand these things, it went sideways as it got later. As the event wound down, you ended up with, I don't know the exact numbers, but you ended up with a lot of people injured, beaten, harassed, a couple of stabbings. I don't know if there was any loss of life, but there was some serious violence. I've got videos of, I stayed up all night screen recording things that the media wasn't showing, but you had people unconscious, an old guy beaten out of a wheelchair, entire families just completely savaged by, the Antifa scum and, leftist fascist is what they are. They call themselves anti-fascist, but we all know what that means. That's just that's a trick that's been used by fascists throughout centuries. So, watching all of that horror unfold on these poor victims made me realize that perhaps it would be useful to do a video on how to stay safe in these types of situations, because this certainly isn't going to be the last protest in this country. And I believe you can use some of these ideas I have, or at least get you thinking and come up with your own opinions and your own ideas, no matter what country you're in. I mean, South Africa is going through its problems. Europe is completely inundated with problems, and there's protests. And I have no doubt that a lot of good people don't attend these things because they're understandably afraid. That nobody wants to go to a protest and try to exercise a little freedom and end up having, you yourself or your family hurt or worse. So I'll just tell you how I handle these things. And it was quite an interesting thing because my daughter was with me. One of my daughters was with me, and she had never been to something like this. And, I'm known in the family as being one of these guys that's constantly in condition red. And quite frankly, sometimes people look at guys like me and they think we're paranoid or we're overreacting, but basically it comes from experience, and it comes from understanding the human condition and what people are capable of. The older you get, the more realistic you get. And so with that in mind, what we did was, the first thing we thought about was I thought about was where are we going to park, because I didn't want my vehicle down in Washington, D.C. anywhere near this event. I know the tactics of the leftist scum. They will stake out areas where patriots park, and they try to weed you out as people after the event. When people are making their way back to their cars, their guard is down. They're usually in small numbers or alone, and that's a good time for weak people to attack. They outnumber and attack the old and the weak. And that's what I did in this case was I drove down to where the Pentagon is in Virginia, and across the street from the Pentagon is a large shopping mall, and I went into their multi-level paid parking, and then we took the subway, down or into DC, across the river into DC. But before I ever went, I had if you look at the videos, my daughter was wearing the backpack, and in the backpack I had gas masks, Israeli gas masks. You can get them anywhere, and that was because a lot of these events you end up with all kinds of tear gas and all kinds of shit, and I got enough medical problems with bones and backs and metal, and I'm not a 23-year-old anymore, and that shit can drop you, and you don't want to be blind and hacking up and puking when you're trying to stay alive. So I got the gas masks. I also had some other things, not less than lethal things that I won't go, well, some pepper spray and things like that in case we had to kind of squirt our way out. And then I had other options too that we'll just leave to your imagination. But more importantly, in the backpack was our Trump flag and, the banner that some of you saw us with posing with our pictures and stuff, and Trump hats and, things that my daughter wanted to wear and all of this stuff. Well, we concealed that in the backpack along with food, first aid supplies, and water and things like that. Now, I also did not take my wallet, and she didn't take her purse. We took our identification and a credit card and a subway pass. It's like an electric ticket with that you put money on it so you can get on the subways in DC. Excuse me. So all of that was in the backpack, and here we are. We head on down into DC, and once we're into the mix, then we get all our, pro-Trump stuff on. And, some people say, well, that's pretty cowardly. I think it's being prudent. You're not going to help anybody if you become a victim. You're just laying on the ground with your teeth kicked out or something. What does that do for anybody? So, and let's be realistic. I'm far from a coward, but, at my age, on the doorstep of 60 and with all my physical issues, I'm not looking forward to being surrounded and attacked by 15 young Antifa thugs, because I don't have the ability to fight like I used to fight, and that leaves me with less and less options, and I'm not interested in taking somebody's life, to be honest with you. For only somebody that's never taken a life would look forward to something like that, and that's a last resort, and it should be a last resort to all of us. But before we went into the crowd, I went over the ground rules with my daughter. I said, look, if we get separated, if shit goes sideways, you put your hand on my belt and you stick with me. If we get separated, we will meet back at the mall in Virginia at the Starbucks, because she likes Starbucks. I know they're liberal and all this other shit. But and I said, whoever gets there first, does not leave till the other person shows up. And you get there with your subway ticket, or you walk, or you take an Uber, or you take a taxi. You do whatever it takes to get to that location. Now, as we got into this march, and there were hundreds of thousands of people, and we got in we finally made it to the Supreme Court. That's where all the Antifa thugs were, and they were out there doing their thing, and they were heavily outnumbered, so they weren't going to get physical at all. There were the Proud Boys there, and then just a bunch of patriots, man. But on the way, I could not help, it really saddened me, because I know that there's never a shortage of victims, and victims typically in this scenario are good people, but are very naive, and you could see it all over. You would see, I can't tell you how many people had their dogs with them, That's just another thing you got to worry about. You don't want to bring your dog. Your dog would be terrorized, first of all, if, you got flashbangs going off, and, Antifa is not, look, if they'll beat up old people in wheelchairs, they'll sure as hell kick your dog. Or worse. So you don't want to bring your dog. These poor dogs are out there thinking it's like they're at a picnic with their family, and it's just too much stimulus, and if shit goes sideways, now you got to focus on that dog, try to get your dog out safe. It's going to put you in jeopardy and anybody around you. Don't bring your pets to these things. The next thing is you got little kids. Now, I understand the concept of you want little Johnny and Sally to see what freedom is like. But we are literally in a state of war right now. We've had basically there's an attempted coup going on in our country, and it's been going on since Donald Trump was elected as a president. And we have to accept reality. There's the way things are, and the way you wish they were. Okay, we got to deal with the way they are. So you're not going to this is not like when I was young and you could go downtown and stand on a soapbox and make a political argument, and people that didn't agree with you would argue with you, but they wouldn't kill you. Times have changed, all right? These are some serious Marxist, communist scumbags that are being paid to cause pain and death and injury and destroy our country. So you need to never forget that we are in a state of war all over this world. It's basically communism versus the rest of us. And it's just, that's, you have to look at it that way. So, here my daughter is an adult, and I was very trepidatious about taking her, but, that puts me in a position where I have one more thing I got to worry about. Okay, I didn't take my wife because I don't think my wife could. I didn't want to have to worry about my daughter and my wife. That's just too much distraction, and I would do things that I normally wouldn't do. If somebody fucking even looked at my wife wrong, I'd start cracking skulls. That's just how I am. So, here we are. We're seeing all of this shit. We get down, we see Antifa, they're doing their shit. Everybody's yelling their stuff. And, my daughter innocently wants to get close to the action. I let her get pretty close, against my better judgment, but I kind of didn't want to be the Johnny, downer guy. So if I had it to do over again, I wouldn't have let us get that close. That was a risk I took that I wish I didn't. Everything worked out, fortunately. But, she wanted to stay, and we stayed for a while, but she wanted to stay longer. And I'm like, no, I went against my instincts and stayed about 15 minutes longer than I normally would have. What is this telling me? So finally I'm like, hey, it's time to go. And we start making that long walk. I mean, it must have been miles back to where the event started. And as we're walking along, and there's crowds of people heading back, there's thousands of us, but scattered out and around, you could see groups of people breaking off. They were tired. They had all their Trump and American flag regalia on, and they were basically, they were worn out from the long walk. And so they were maybe sitting at outdoor tables eating, or sitting by their cooler. And I was thinking, man, there's your victims right there. These are the victims, because they're going to get left behind. And as the numbers thin out, the enemy gets bold. And, I said this much. And as we get close to where we're going to turn toward the subway, excuse me, I told my daughter, hey, lose the Trump hat. And she's like, oh, come on, Dad, I want to wear it. And I said, no. You need to lose the Trump hat. We don't need to start any bullshit. I mean, look, I wish we lived in a country where we could just wear what we wanted, but those times are over temporarily. Hopefully it's just temporarily. So she takes it off, puts it in the backpack. We get out of the subway, and sure enough, when we get off at the first stop, there's maybe 15 African-American young people just motherfucking there's 3 cops there, and they're in their face, fucking fry you like bacon, you pig motherfuckers, and flipping them off, and just raising a ruckus. And I said to her, can you imagine if you had that Trump hat on? I mean, what am I going to do? 16 punks come up and the chicks are pulling your hair and the guys are throwing punches at me. It could get ugly. It's unnecessary risks that we don't need to take. And, later on, the next morning when she had seen all the carnage that took place later, she comes up to me and says, hey, Dad, you were so right. You taught me so much. I mean, all your concern turned out to be totally legit. So she is waking up, and hopefully you don't avoid these things. I'm not trying to scare people out of going to these things, but you have to know your strengths and your weaknesses. If I was 10 or 15 years younger, I'd probably be with the Proud Boys, all right, in spite of the media telling you they're a bunch of racists. I'd like to be an enforcer. That's my mentality. That's why I've been an enforcer type dude my whole life, wearing this uniform and that uniform and law enforcement, military. I'm that way. I'm a problem solver. But I'm also not a young man anymore, and I'm in a body that's got lots of metal, and I've had over 40 surgeries, and I'm broken up, and I got to accept reality. So the way that I fight now is just by showing up and by using my voice and using this platform, in as much as these thought police cockbiters will let me do it. But you have to know your limitations, know what you're capable of, don't get in over your head. And when you go to these things, go with a crowd, leave with a crowd. Don't be a straggler. It's not a 4th of July picnic where you can sit on a grassy knoll and enjoy and then rehash the events of the day. Think about, is this thing even still recording yet? Think about where you're going to park. Think about, your different alternate routes to get to your car. Or your vehicle, or do you want to take public transportation? And if you do, what is the platform like? I mean, are you going to be in a really bad area? You do your homework. If you don't know anything about Antifa and they're going to be there, you need to research them and watch their videos. It's really easy to learn how they operate. They're like rabid dogs. They single out the weak and the small numbers, and then they overpower you and they stab, beat, kick, and spit on you. This is what they are. They're the bottom feeders of the world, and that's what they're just like all brown shirt Nazis. That's how they are. And then they call you the Nazi. Funny story, and then I'll let it go. Hopefully this thing doesn't stop. I don't know why my memory is acting up on my phone, but this is kind of an ironic story that I wanted to get in here. I hadn't been on the metro for a long time, on the subway, and my daughter and I are looking at the map, and clearly we don't know where the fuck we're going. We're trying to figure out where to get close to this thing. And this young black dude standing next to me, and he hears us, and he goes, "Hey, are you guys going to the rally?" I look at him, I go, "Yeah, but we're Antifa." And he looks at me and he goes, "Yeah, me too." And I said, "Until we get there." And we laughed and blah, blah, blah. And it turned out that he was a conservative guy. And then his partner shows up. It's a white guy. So I'm like, "Hey, are you guys a couple?" You know, I'm pretty direct. That's normally how I roll. And, "Oh, yeah." And so we hit it off right out the bat. We start talking, all the way into DC. We're talking about the troubles that he had to go through, him and his partner, because here he's not only black and conservative, which he always wasn't. He wasn't always that way. Like most people, he was told that Trump is racist and blah, blah, blah. But he was a free thinker, and he did his homework, and he realized he'd been bullshitted. So he becomes a Trump supporter, which isn't easy for a black person. Then as a gay person, it's a double whammy, because now you're not only an Uncle Tom and a sellout, but you're like a traitor to the gay community, I guess. So, as we get to this thing, my daughter and I, we take out our Trump banner, and there's all kinds of construction going on next to me. What the fuck? And we asked this guy, "Hey, can you take a picture of us?" So we're holding the banner. We got the gay black guy taking the picture of me and my daughter and I in the Trump flag, and here comes like a little Antifa wannabe on a scooter, and she yells out, "Fucking racist!" And now just think about it. There's a gay black man taking a picture of a white guy and his Vietnamese daughter, born in Vietnam and Vietnamese, and we're called racist. This is the mentality of these fucking people, man. I mean, you just had to laugh. Of course, me being me, I yelled out, "If you ain't white, you ain't right." Standard Mike behavior. But anyways, I hope that gave you something to think about. Other people, man, chime in, give your suggestions. This is how we educate each other, and we help each other stay safe and stay alive. And remember, there's always safety in numbers, and plan for the worst, and hope for the best. Don't get caught unaware. Make sure you got first aid kits with you. You got, if you don't, not just for you. You may have to help somebody. Have a plan A, have a plan B, have a meeting location if you guys get separated. Have a different means of communication if you can. The more, the better. Anyways, that's it. I hope that helped somebody. And I want to see everybody safe and sound, but I want to also see you standing up for your freedom and your rights. And, we're all in it together. And where we go one, we go all. LMS Tactile, stay safe. I'm out.